Hey guys, it's Mallie. Welcome back to my channel. Okay guys, so today I have a word for you, and I actually preached this message twice this week, and I just kind of felt like I wanted to come on here and also film it for you guys. And so here's what the message is called: How to Truly Follow Jesus as a Teenager from a Teenager. So I almost wanted to talk about this because I really felt like this urgency in my spirit as I've been praying this past week, because I felt like Americans have almost lost the sense of value of what it truly means to follow Jesus. I almost think that our standards have changed for what that truly means. So I wanted to kind of come on here and talk about how I followed Jesus as a teenager and as I've walked this out in my teenage years, and how you guys can also do that as well. Okay, so with that being said, the first thing I kind of prayed about was, God, what does it mean to truly follow Jesus? Because I honestly think that Americans now think that going to church on Sunday is being a Christian, or even being a really good Christian is going to church on Wednesdays or Sunday nights and going to those extra church services. But the thing is, you aren't identified as a Christian just because you show up to church. You're identified as a Christian by the way that you live your life. And so the verse that I'm going to share with you guys first is Matthew 16:24. And this is a verse that honestly probably changed my life. It was so powerful. But I love this verse because it directly says in Matthew 16:24, here's what it says. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if you truly want to follow me, you should at once completely reject and disown your own life. And as you are willing to be sharing my cross and experience it as your own, and as you continually surrender to my ways. For if you choose self-sacrifice and lose your life for my glory, you will continually discover true life. But if you choose to keep your life for yourself, you will forfeit everything that you're trying to keep. And I really, really love that verse because, first of all, the first thing it says, if you actually want to be a follower of who I am, you're going to reject everything that you know. You're going to reject who you are in the flesh, in your natural mind. And why does it say that? And he says, basically God is saying, I want you to get rid of everything in your flesh so that I can make you something new in the supernatural, what I've called you to do. Because I think a lot of times our natural mind will almost limit what God's trying to do. We limit with our natural mind. I think of whenever Jesus was walking on the water and he called one of the disciples out, and the disciple starts walking towards him. Why could he walk on the water, but then he started sinking? It's because he looked at the winds and the waves, and he looked at with his natural mind, and that's why he began to sink, because he looked at his natural mind. And in that same way, I think we do that with our life. We begin to think with our natural mind, and that limits us. So God's saying, if you get rid of the natural, if you get rid of your flesh, if you get rid of your sinful ways, if you get rid of all of your self-life cravings, then I can make something new in you. And another verse that God showed me a little bit after that goes right along with this is in John 12:23. And I've definitely preached on this literally so many times, so I'm going to kind of skim through it. The first part in verse 23 says, a single grain of wheat will never be more than a single grain of wheat unless it drops to the ground and dies. And I kind of want to touch on that for a second. I love how it's saying that a seed is never going to be anything more than a seed unless you put it to the ground, let it die to its normal shell, so it can sprout something new. And I think that's such a beautiful picture that Jesus painted in the Bible. And he was talking about, in our lives, you can never be anything more than your mortal natural mind unless you let that side of yourself die so I can make something new. And anyways, the next part of that verse that I really want to touch on is this. It's in verse 25. It says, the person who loves his life and pampers himself will miss the true meaning of life. But the one who detaches his life from the world and abandons himself to me will find true life and enjoy it forever. In verse 26, it says, if you want to be my disciple, follow me and you'll go where I'm going, and my Father will shower favor upon you. Okay, those verses are so powerful because that's what it means to follow God. I like how that was saying that if you pamper yourself your entire life, you're missing the true meaning of life. And I think that's so true. If we become so self-obsessed with ourselves and pampering ourselves and our desires before anything else, we miss the true meaning of what life is. And if we think we're a Christian just because we go to church on Sundays, we're actually missing the true meaning of life. I mean, being a follower of God is not staying in the middle ground of your life. I think of the Egyptians. Whenever Moses got them out of Egypt and he was trying to bring them into the promised land, but they stayed in the middle ground for 40 years. Some scientists have said that it actually it would have taken realistically about 12 days for them to get to Egypt into the promised land, but instead it took 40 years. Why did it take that long? Because of their mindset, because of their natural mind, that they couldn't overcome the thought of that there was going to be giants in that land. And I think that's exactly what we do sometimes. If if we think that going to church on Sunday makes us a Christian, we're actually missing the whole meaning of life. Anyways, with that being said, that's kind of like the opening to kind of what it means to follow Jesus. And then now, Jesus kind of gave me 3 words prophetically, and he wanted me to kind of like share them with you guys and talk about them on how to follow Jesus. So the first one is super important. I think that's the basis of where to start. I think of a lot of times whenever people have like an encounter with Jesus and they want to like completely change their life, but they don't know how to take an encounter and change that into a lifetime. And I think the first word that I'm gonna share with y'all is the most important. It is this: devotion. And I love this picture that Jesus kind of like painted to me whenever he told me about this word, because he began to just kind of tell me this. He said, I'm not looking for a perfect Christian. I'm not looking for a professional, profound preacher or the best worship leader. I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for someone that's willing. And I think that is honestly so beautiful, because I think of the verse in, I'm going to try to quote it. It's in 2 Chronicles 16:9. It says, the eyes of the Lord move to and fro throughout the whole earth, looking for someone whose hearts are completely committed to him so that he can strengthen them. And I love that verse, because honestly, that's so life-changing, because it's saying the eyes of the Lord are looking constantly for someone who is not perfect, who's not profound, who's not the best worship leader, who's not the best preacher, who's willing, who's committed to his plan, who's dedicated to the call. And what does it say after that? So that he can strengthen their heart. And I literally love that, because sometimes we think we have to be qualified for God to call us, but God qualifies the one he's called. Like, I think of the disciples of the Bible. They weren't perfect. Matthew was a tax collector. He was taking money from Jesus' people, but Jesus didn't look at the circumstance he was in and say, I can't use you because of the sin you're in right now. Instead, he took him in the middle of his life where he was, pulled him out of that and said, follow me. And Matthew became devoted. He began to literally follow Jesus. And that's how he stepped into his purpose, because he began to follow Jesus. And anyway, that was way off my notes. But anyways, that's what the first word, that's why I love it so much, because it's just simply devotion. He's looking for someone that's devoted to his call. And so I just have been praying, God, not my will, but yours be done. Because whenever you start being on fire and radical for Jesus, there is a thing called sacrifice that you're going to have to go through. That's not one of the words. I just wanted to kind of talk about this for a second, because whenever last year, probably like these past couple of years in my high school, and I'm a senior now, but kind of like my other years of high school, I would say, you know, I was pretty well liked. A lot of people liked me and everything like that. And I really enjoyed that, because I'm a words of affirmation girl. That's my love language out of the 5 love languages. I'm a words of affirmation person. And so whenever I would get like affirmation or acceptance from other people, that like fueled me almost. And so I really had to, like, as soon as I started living like on fire radically for God, I had to take that idea of I'm not looking to like be accepted by other people, because I'm already accepted by the one who created me and the only one that really matters. And so really I had to like change my mindset. And now that I've started to live like so on fire for God, I had to sacrifice a lot of things. I had to sacrifice relationships, friendships, all of these other things that I thought, you know, I wanted, all these other things that I thought to be accepted by this person and him and her and all these people. And so I had to sacrifice that. So yes, it was hard in that moment. It was hard to be devoted. Whenever I was in this season of life, whenever I felt like God was just taking things out, I was like, God, I don't understand. Like, you've called me to do all of these things, and I honestly feel like I'm in a losing season. Like, I know that you're using me through this process, but it's hard, because like whenever God's taking things out of your life, it's like, no, like those are the things or the people that I love and that I cherish and things like that. But every time God closes the door, he always opens another one. Let me tell you guys, it has been like 2 months since I had like a really big like life shift and everything like that. And let me just honestly say, it was hard in the moment. I remember I cried in my prayer room like literally almost every single day. But I look at my life now and I can honestly say I am so incredibly happy. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later in my next word. But I'm so like incredibly happy for that process that God took me through, honestly. I mean, like, it was hard. There were a lot of things I had to walk through. And just like my senior year, you know, I expected it to be this like huge, like perfect movie type deal. Like, it was just, everything's going to be turning up Mally, you know. And then honestly, it's just been, sorry, this is a very vulnerable message, but it has just been a little bit different than what I expected. But honestly, I'm so thankful for it, because I'm so thankful for God's faithfulness through every single situation in my life. Because yes, it may have been hard in the moment, but if I didn't go through those things, I couldn't have grown through, and I couldn't be where I'm at today. And if I wasn't listening to God's voice, I would not be doing anything that I'm doing right now. So I'm honestly so thankful. But you know how I got to the point where I'm at right now? dedication, being dedicated to God's call. So when I had to say, God, I will give up anything and everything it takes for me to keep following after you. And I'm getting to my next word. Okay, I might as well just switch over. That was my first word, the devotion. That's super important. The essence of what it means to follow Jesus is just to, first of all, be devoted to him. Be completely devoted to him. That is how you grow your relationship. You don't grow a relationship by just talking to someone one time, having an encounter with them one time. No, you have to keep on being dedicated to building that relationship. And it's the same way with God. You know, you have to spend every single day with him. You have to be devoted to getting his word, saturating yourself in prayer, saturating yourself in worship, putting yourself around good people, being dedicated to his call, doing anything and everything to get yourself closer to God, to become a better version of yourself through God. Okay, so on to number 2. The second word is this, consecration. I love this word so much. I feel like I hear it a lot. And sometimes whenever I preach about consecration, I feel like the teenagers that I preach to, every time I say the word consecration, their mind just goes blank. They're like, what are you talking about? So here's kind of what the word consecration means to me. It is to set oneself apart for something so much greater. And I think that is literally so beautiful, like to set yourself apart for something so much greater. And I think that's so beautiful because it's so true. Because I've seen so many times in my life whenever I literally had to set myself apart, be different from the crowd for something greater, for something so much greater. And I honestly think in high school, that's exactly what I'm walking through. That, you know, I'm not going to go to all the parties. I'm not going to go out and do all this. I'm not going to go and hang out with y'all after this. And I'm not going to go do all this other stuff that I used to, you know, want to do. But now I'm like, no, I have to set myself apart because I'm a part of something so much greater. And I'm working on something so much greater. First of all, I'm working on myself. I'm becoming the best version of myself possible. So I can't go backwards. I can't go back to who I used to be. No. I'm going to always be pushing forward. I have a sticky on my whiteboard that says no backing up because that's so true. Whenever God, that's a memory verse. Hold on. Let me find it because I actually talked about this today. It's in Galatians. It says, in Galatians 5:1, it says, let me be clear, the anointed one has set us free, not partially, but completely and hopefully free. With that being said, we must always cherish this truth and stubbornly refuse to go back to the bondage of our past. And that is so true. You have to refuse. God, you set me free one time. There ain't no way I'm going back. I don't live in accordance to the way that the sin I used to dwell in. God, I am set free completely and hopefully, and I'm so thankful for that. And I refuse to be any part, to take part of that, to put myself in an environment. You know, I'm preaching way too far down my list. I got to get back up to where I was talking about. Anyways. So consecration, to set yourself apart. So one of the things that I prayed, and I actually have this written down in my room where I get ready. I have it on a sticky note. And it says, God, I will never put my dignity or my desires before your purpose and your presence. And I think that is honestly so powerful because it's hard. Like a lot of times we put our dignity and we want to do whatever our heart desires. Because honestly, that's what American's natural mind is. If I desire it, I ought to have it. If I want this, I'm going to go get that. If I want that, I'm going to go get that. But honestly, that is the exact opposite of what God is calling us to do. And that sounds like crazy, but he's saying, my desires before your desires, my glory before your glory. And if you trust my plan, I'll shower favor upon you. The person that loses their life for me actually finds the meaning of true life. That is biblical and that is with a promise. And I love that so much. So I had to just begin to pray, God, I will lay down anything. God, I will lay down everything and everyone that is holding me back from your presence. So it's holding me back from getting closer to you. And that's kind of what I was talking about a second ago. God, whenever I began to pray this, I was like, God, take anything and everyone out that's holding me back from you. And let me just go ahead and remind you guys, just warn y'all, if you pray that prayer, it literally will happen. I've literally, if I could describe it to y'all, it's like spaghetti, if any of you have ever cooked spaghetti, and it has the water and the noodles, and you pour it in that strainer, and all the water comes out, but the noodles are left. That's what it was like. God took away all of the extra stuff and just left the raw noodles. That was a weird analogy. Sorry, I just came up with that. But God literally would take everything and anyone out that was keeping me back from him. And honestly, you know, like I was saying, it was hard in the process. Whenever God was shutting all his doors, I was like, God, I don't understand, but I'm going to trust your process. I'm going to trust your plan for this entire thing. And he literally is so amazing. Like he brought, whenever he closed those doors, if I just had to wait, I just had to wait just a little bit longer, push a little bit deeper, and then God opened up new ones. And I'm so thankful for all of them. Oh my gosh, I wish I could just tell you all my testimony right now because it's so awesome. The way that just God has, the things I'm talking about right now, God has literally done in my life. And that's why I'm like so excited about this. because it's true. It's like my testimony, and there's Bible says the power in your testimony. Anyways, so James 4:4 says this: don't you know that flirting with sin puts you at odds with God? And so here's what I think about. That verse is saying not even committing the sin, but flirting with sin puts you at odds with God. And so the word consecration goes completely against that. It's saying you can't even put yourself in an environment that tempts you to sin. So if you had a problem with drinking or partying, but you say, okay, I'm living for Jesus now. I'm not going to drink, but I will go to the party just so I can say I went, but I'm not going to drink. That is putting yourself in an environment to sin, and it's putting you in an environment that tempts you to sin. And the Bible literally says that puts you at odds with God. So I just want y'all to think about that for a second. That is really powerful. So another thing that I want to touch on before I move on to our third word is this. You have to be willing to be set apart. Ooh, I'm going to say that again. You have to be willing to be set apart. Because I think about, there's a difference whenever you're like, oh, dang, I don't get to go to that party like everybody else. That's because I'm living for Jesus. There's a difference between that and saying, you know, I don't even want to go to that party. I don't even want to be around that. And honestly, there's so much joy that you will find whenever you realize, I don't even want to do that. I don't even want to be around them. I don't even want to go and do that because I have something so much greater. My calling is so much more powerful that I don't even got time for that. I don't have any desire in my heart to go towards that. Okay, so, and another thing, this is a joke, but if people aren't calling you like the Jesus girl, the Jesus guy at school or work, then you're probably doing something wrong. And like, that's a joke, but honestly, I'm being serious. If people can't pick you out in a crowd and say, like, she is completely on fire for Jesus, I'm not even going to invite her to a party. She will not go. He will not go, whatever. Like, if they can't identify you as a Christian, you're doing something wrong. Okay, on to word number 3, the last word, and it is this. Sustained. And I think this word is so powerful. I actually preached a full message on this, and I believe it's on my YouTube channel, and it's called Satisfied versus Sustained. So if this word speaks to you, you can go watch the full video on my channel down there. But kind of what that word means is sustained. And I think as you're walking with God, first of all, there comes devotion. Second of all comes consecration. Those kind of go hand in hand, being devoted to Him and then setting yourself apart. But then after that comes the reward, sustainment from God. And honestly, I think about this. A lot of times we like to be satisfied for a moment with superficial, materialistic things. And that sounds like a lot of big words, but it's honestly so true. We like to be satisfied with getting the newest iPhone, with getting the newest shoes, with having the newest Lululemon or whatever. That's what girls think. I don't know what guys think, whatever, the newest football or whatever y'all think. But having like the newest stuff or having the best image, having the best name, being the coolest kid on the block, you know, things like that. Would you rather be satisfied with all those things for a moment? Because, you know, those things are so temporary. They're temporary satisfiedness. But the opposite is being sustained with having something that never goes away, with having something that is completely there for you, that will completely satisfy every area of your life, and it's not going to go away. It's going to completely sustain you. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit of personal side to this. I have walked through that. I've done all the little superficial things I thought I wanted in this world. I've walked through that, done that, and I can tell you, whenever you rely on satisfaction from temporary things, it will leave you empty. It will leave you broken, because the key word, it's temporary. It doesn't last. I remember the other day, I felt like I was supposed to remind myself of God's promises, and I went back to some of my old photos and my memories. I remember I went to I went hung out with certain people and did all this other stuff, and I looked back at those pictures and I was like, that looked like it was a happy time in my life. But then the next day, or that night even, I would be crying my eyes out because I was so not happy. Like, all those things that people think that they want, all those things they want to be accepted by, and all of that stuff, it's not gonna last you. It's not gonna sustain you. And think about even in high school, people want to go out and do all these other things and be like the coolest person in high school and go to all the parties, but honestly, as soon as you graduate, that's over. Real talk. But anyways, so the last thing I kind of want to leave y'all with is this, is all the questions I had before I started living completely on fire for God. God answered every single one of those questions in His own way. Like, anytime I have a question, He's not a silent God. He's not a silent God. He answers my questions in every area of my life. Like, if I'm saying, God, I need answer, like I need an answer. Like, I don't understand what to do in my life. Even like if I don't directly hear from him, something will show up in my life. Like he'll open a door and say, that one's for you. And like immediately I'll know it's from him. And so he's satisfied every single area of my life. And he's satisfied every area of my heart. All of the brokenness that I used to have, all of the depression and the sadness and things like that. He's satisfied every single area of my life, and I can honestly say I'm the happiest I've ever been because I finally found something that is worth living for. I found Jesus Christ, and he is the best thing you will ever experience. I'm telling you, I lived this out. I've walked through this. I'm not just some girl that's just talking to you, making up all these lies. I'm serious. I have walked through every area of this. I'm telling you, truly following Jesus is the answer to happiness completely and wholly. And the last thing I want to leave you with is this. The world often teaches us to romanticize our sin and even to identify your sin. And I don't really know who needs to hear this, but you are not your sin. If you're sad one day, that does not mean you're a depressed person. If you are anxious or fearful, that does not mean you have anxiety. I'm telling you, the world has tried to romanticize and identify our sin, but we are not our sin. And so I just want to call that out of you right now. And actually, the last thing I want to leave you with is this. If you are looking for a way to truly walk with God, like something that's going to like a phrase that'll like last you, a little bit of a personal story. Whenever I was kind of like facing all of these things, like God, whenever he was shutting all these doors and I was just beginning to like really walk closely with him, I was like, God, I'm a little confused because I've lost like all of my closest friends and I thought they were going to be like my best friends ever. Like how do you want me to keep going about life? Like I feel like I'm alone a lot of times. And so here's what he told me. He said, let me walk with you. Let me walk with you. And I'm telling you, that is a phrase that will stick with me for the rest of my life because I remember that still small voice that God told me, and I physically felt him just like wrap his arms around me and say, just let me walk with you. And honestly, I can say in my first day of senior year, I walked into my high school and I felt God tell me, let me walk with you with this whole thing. And so I had so much peace. I had like the most peace I've ever had in my entire life because I felt something so much bigger, something so much greater walking with me. And I'm telling you, and this is not just some random occurrence that happened to me. It can happen to you too. He wants to walk with you. And he wants to have a relationship with you. So in closing, I realize this is almost a 30-minute long video, so I'm going to close it up with some prayer. God, I just want to pray for my friends that are watching this video. God, I just want to pray that, God, you're walking with them. I pray that you visibly talk to them throughout their day, Lord. I pray that you were just declaring over them, and I pray that you are putting just angels on assignment over their entire life, Lord. In the name of Jesus, I declare that they feel you, God, as they go back into school, as they go back into work, God, that they're feeling your presence in every area of their life, God. And I pray that, God, you are satisfying and sustaining every single area of their heart, God. In the name of Jesus, I pray, amen. I hope this video encouraged you guys. I know it encouraged me, and I'm super excited to be back on YouTube, so make sure that you share this video with a friend. Go to the little share button and send it to some people, and then make sure to subscribe to this channel, and I will see you guys later. This video encouraged you guys. Bye.